Today we're going to be looking at Arctic Fox in the color Sunset Orange mixed with Transylvania. You may notice that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12, but I want to just say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such near the end of the video usually, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. 1 is green, 2 is a very cool toned gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 is black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde. And then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. Also, these are human hair, but they are not virgin hair. The only swatch that's going to be virgin hair is the number 4 black swatch. Otherwise, the rest have been chemically colored, bleached, or treated at some point in their lifetime. So usually when I do mixes, I will keep the darker version of the color on the top, and then the lighter version will go on the bottom. I ended up using all of my Sunset Orange on this because Transylvania is so dark, and usually the ends are a lot easier to color. They're less thick. The top requires a lot more color, so I'm actually going to reverse it. The lighter version of this mix will be at the top, and the darker version will be at the bottom, so that I don't have to try and mix more because I don't really have more to mix in the first place. So the top section is going to be a 36:1 ratio. I know it sounds like a lot, but like I said, Transylvania is quite dark. So that will be 36 parts of Sunset Orange to 1 part Transylvania. So for something like this, I think you're better off just starting with a base of Sunset Orange and then adding a very, very tiny amount of Transylvania until you get the color that you want, instead of trying to do it in parts, because you're going to end up using a lot of dye like I did if you do it this way. I still like to keep it consistent for you guys just in case someone out there does really want an exact measurement, but that is my recommendation. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus different screens and monitors and such can make colors look different, so please just use this video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the bottom, it's going to be a 12:1 ratio. So that will be 12 parts of the Sunset Orange to 1 part Transylvania. If I sound sick at all, I am. I got COVID for the first time. Like, it finally got me. So I want to apologize for not posting very consistently. Just feel like a lot of weird things have happened, and then I got COVID, but I'm starting to feel better. So obviously that's why I'm filming. Thank you to everyone who watches my videos, but especially thank you to the people who consistently come back to watch my videos. I really appreciate you. And I'm really sorry that I haven't been posting as consistently as I would like to be. Alright, I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours so they can really absorb the color. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we will do our comparisons. So I would say this is pretty similar to what I was picturing it would look like when I had mixed together the colors and I saw just how brown it was looking. Not that I was concerned, but I was like, whoa, this is way more brown than I thought it would be. Then I thought about it and I realized like Transylvania is a very blue undertoned black, so it does make sense that it would kind of neutralize the orange a little and make it look less red. But I also feel like a lot of people use Sunset Orange to make their hair look kind of red, so I was still hopeful that on the swatches it would have a reddish look, maybe like an auburn, and I'm excited to say that it definitely does, especially on the top half that has more of the Sunset Orange. but I would say even the bottom still has a slightly kind of red hue to it. It's definitely more neutral in comparison to the top, but if you're trying to make a neutral brown, I don't think this is going to be the right mix for you. This is going to be better if you are looking to have a hint of red. Unless maybe you have green hair to start with, because the number one was originally green, and I would say that's probably the least red looking swatch out of all of them, especially the bottom half. That one looks almost like a brown black. It's not to say that there might still be a slight red hue in certain lightings, but in comparison to the rest, it's definitely more neutral. I think because this mix is so pigmented, there's not a huge variation between a lot of them. So I'm not going to talk as individual strands as much this time because so many are so similar. Number two usually is a lot more cool toned than the blonde ones. It might still be, but from what I'm seeing, it looks nearly the same as the blonde swatches. Interestingly enough, I actually think the light to medium brown swatches are a little bit lighter in comparison to the blonde, and I think it's because the blonde swatches are probably more porous and absorb color a little bit better. So especially number 8, that one is probably the most red looking out of all of my swatches, and it's actually fairly light in comparison as well, and then it kind of darkens back down as the swatches get lighter. 3 and 6 seem to also be pretty comparable. I don't think the natural red underneath played a really big role in how the color turned out, at least not on my swatches. Totally be different for you. So I always recommend doing a strand test. And also if you have hair that is virgin, it's never been dyed before, semi-permanent colors tend to struggle to either dye the hair or stick to the hair. So there's always a chance that this could wash out for you, but this seems pretty pigmented to the point where I would say it's better for dark hair than maybe some. 4 is the only swatch I do not see a difference on. It's still fairly dark, and from what I see, quite neutral. It's like a very true black compared to the rest. And number 5 came out quite dark. Like it almost looks like a black similar to the bottom of number 1, but I think there's a little bit more warmth than the number 1 has. I'm also not sure how hard it is to tell on camera the difference between the top and the bottom. So just to reiterate, the bottom had a lot more of Transylvania compared to the top, so it is a little bit darker and a little bit more neutral, but both mixes turned out quite dark. So that is why if you are looking for a color that's not this dark, I would recommend starting with the base of Sunset Orange. And even if your mix doesn't look very dark, definitely do a strand test, because my mix for the top half looked very medium brown, but here it definitely looks like a dark reddish brown. All right, so now I wanted to look at comparisons. When it comes to these more natural colors, I don't have a ton to pick from, but I did do some Arctic Fox brown mixes a little while ago, and there's one that I think looks probably the most similar. So I think I'd like to compare that one. Now, it was one of my shorter videos, so I do not have a measurement for it. This is comparable to number 11. And this was Phantom Green mixed with Wrath. Now your ends are going to just naturally be a little bit more porous over time, even if you're not doing a lot of stuff to your hair. So the end of this swatch, even though this is all one mix, it's all the same, it does look a little bit more red. So I'm gonna flip it so you can kind of see there. So for the brown swatch with the Phantom Green and Wrath, it does look just a hair, it does look just a bit more neutral compared to the swatch, but that's also hard to fully say because the Sunset Orange and Transylvania mix is so dark. But I do feel like I just see a little bit more red coming through than brown on our mix today versus the other one does lean just a hair more brown. If anyone is interested, maybe one day I can make a short video where I dilute our Sunset Orange mix to see what it looks like lightened. But I do also want to warn to be careful when you're playing with these kinds of mixes, because how they could fade could be just completely random. I had a mossy color in my hair a little while back, and I used a little bit of red in a green to make it a little bit more mossy because it was too saturated and bright for my liking. And when it faded, it oddly faded red. The little bit of red that I had put in the mix stuck to my hair. So that is a small warning I have for either of these mixes. The other comparison I wanted to do today is actually not a mix. It's a dye on its own, and it is by Manic in the color Bat Outta Hell. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, And number 9. So Manic had come out with a line of natural brown dye. I noticed upon swatching all of them that they are all a little bit more red leaning, but this is the darkest brown, if I remember correctly, and the most neutral. Again, still kind of red leaning, because I think how they did it was they had a natural red base and they kept adding like a black to it to make it darker, is kind of what it looked like to me. So that kind of reminded me of what we did with Sunset Orange, and I actually feel like the result is pretty similar. To me, the dye looks like it's kind of in between the top and the bottom. It's definitely not as neutral as the bottom, but I see more red in the top mix than I do in the Manic Panic. So it's kind of right in between. I will link the videos down below for anything that I mention. And it's interesting because it's even the same kind of depth, like darkness, but you can see here what it looks like diluted, and you can see those kind of natural reds coming through. So I'd say at that point, it's pretty much preference on what's easiest to get for you or what you like. But I'm happy to see that we actually have a comparison that's fairly similar. All right, so now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything past this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. Because I am using natural lighting, that does mean that I have to film on different days, which means the lighting environment can change. So if the before and after clips look kind of different or off from each other, that is why. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much for my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.